The idea of Avas Yisrael and Achdus Yisrael. Did you see this clip? Did you see this clip that went around last week? Mamish last week. One of the girls who was held a hostage. Did you see this clip? You have to see this. It's not unto be believed. A girl who was held a hostage. She was released very recently. So she says that while she was being held in captivity, one of the captors called her in to watch television with her. And they were watching what was going on in Israel, in Israel. And she sees a demonstration to support the hostages and the situation, where all types of Yidden were together, protesting, from a Yidden and not from a Yidden, Charedim, Mizrahi, and so on. And she says, I was taken away from Eretz Yisrael and Simchas Torah. I don't like this October 7th, people. It wasn't October 7th, it was Simchas Torah. It was Simchas Torah. And Eretz Yisrael, here was Shmini Atzeres. Eretz Yisrael was Simchas Torah. It was Simchas Torah. So she said, when I left Eretz Yisrael, we were at war with each other. You couldn't get two Jews of two different stripes in the same neighborhood. And here, I'm a captive, and I'm watching all the Jewish people unified, and I thought to myself, this is what she says publicly now, that the reason for this event was to bring the Jewish people together. And the Muslim, the Arab, says to her, when the Jewish people are unified, they're very strong. This video came out a week and a half ago. It's recent. I'm very bad with these things. You can find it. I'm not going to be able to find it to send it to you, but McKenna's gefindet. The Goy tells her, when the Jewish people are unified, they're very strong. Now, what am I supposed to say? Tafshin Pei Dalet, almost from the very beginning, has been a year that's testing us, every single one of us as a Jew, wherever we live in the world, of course, and especially so if we live in Eretz Yisrael, or we have people visiting Eretz Yisrael, or we have people who, relatives or friends, who live in Eretz Yisrael, and of course, these are our brothers and sisters. This year is so painful and so protracted, we don't have enough emotion for it, you know? How long did the 6-day war last? 6 days. How long did the Yom Kippur war last? Something like 20 days. For 20 days you can be emotional, you know? How do you be emotional for 9 months? We're going through, there's a Machon in Eretz Yisrael. And they took Rahman al-Islam, I mean the shchitas and the hostages. I don't need to tell you, all of us know it. But every day, boys are dying. Every day. Every day. And we don't have kelim, I think, to remain tuned in. You know, if this had happened over a short period of time, we'd all be. The Pasuk says, my eyes and my heart are there on Eretz Yisrael, Tomid, constantly, all my days. Tomid kol hayamim. For most of us, that we should feel today like we felt the day after Simchas Torah, is very difficult. It's a hard place to stay. And of course, the more important question is, how do we react to something like this? We, the Jewish people all over the world, are going through an unbelievable nisayon, an unbelievable nisayon. We're being attacked. And we don't have the kelim to react in a sustained way for all this time. Forgive me for saying these words. Like grown-ups, we run out of emotion. We run out of, you know, if we were there and the bombs are dropping on our house, you know what I'm saying? It's a very, very difficult situation for all of us. And it's of course critical and important not to make believe it isn't happening. And it needs to be discussed, Beklal, and during this time of the year, Befrat. So I'm going to share some thoughts from the Rebbe, from earlier circumstances like these, as insight, as windows into what, I don't know, I can't say what's going on now. It's impossible. What's going on now is unbelievable. We all believe that this is the threshold of Mashiach. We just don't know the plan, right? We don't have the advanced copy of the story. And believe it or not, we don't want it. Ignorance is bliss. Ignorance is bliss. But derweile, at the moment, there's so much uncertainty. So I'm going to share some thoughts about the Rebbe and these kinds of situations that have happened in the past. Number one, a story. This happened in the early 80s, let's say 1983, either 83 or 84, either Mem Gimel or Mem Dalad, I'm not sure which year, but both of those years, Lag BaOmer was on a Sunday, and when Lag BaOmer was on a Sunday, there was a Lag BaOmer parade. Right after Pesach, so I read the story in a magazine, in the Beis Mashiach magazine, written by a Jew who lives in Sydney, Australia, whose name is Rabbi Danny Kay. The story happened with him. He's writing the story as a first-person story, as a first-person account. That after Pesach, in 1983, Tafshim Mem Gimel, the Rebbe came to 770, and he told his secretaries that it's very important that this year there should be many Lag BaOmer parades, not just in 770, but all over the world, and that as many Jewish children as possible should be gathered on Lag BaOmer. And the Rebbe, by the way, the Rebbe wanted the floats, and he wanted the marching bands, and he wanted the parade, he wanted the rides and the barbecue, but the Rebbe's interest was Teira Tefillin Tzedakah. The Rebbe's interest was that we should get together, children, pure children should get together and say a pasuk and say a tefillah and put money in a pushka, because this is the biggest chus for Klal Yisrael, the biggest shmira for Klal Yisrael. In other words, the Rebbe liked and appreciated the need for all the entertainment, but the Rebbe was not mispal from the Ruchinuyus. He was interested in the kernel, in the truth. Teira Tefillah Tzedakah, kleine kinderlach, little children should get together and say a pasuk and Teira, and daven a tefillah, and give tzedakah. So the Rebbe said that he wants that they should call every place in the world that Chabad has an influence and ask people to make parades. So they started to do work on it. The next morning, the Rebbe comes to 770, and again he's insisting that they have to call every Chabad outpost in the world to make a parade. In a few days, after a couple of days, they realized that the Rebbe is very, very intent on this, and that there's something going on they do not understand. So they put people on a bank of phones to constantly call, to call. And they called many times to whoever they could reach that they should make parades on Lag BaOmer. As it got closer to Lag BaOmer, the Rebbe came with a new idea that it's very, very important that in Morocco, in Casablanca, there was a yeshiva and there were baruch there at that time, that they have to make a parade and gather as many children as possible. And he singled out Morocco, which is on the North African coast. It's across the Straits of Gibraltar from Spain, if you know the map. As it got closer to Lag BaOmer, the Rebbe's request became more incessant, more pushy, and the focus on Morocco became more singular. And finally, the Bacharim in Morocco were busy preparing a parade, and they got the strangest Torah from the Rebbe, a very strange Torah. This is 1983. That means it's 41 years ago, either 41 or 40 years ago. The Torah was that one of the Bacharim should go to the consulate, or to the embassy, I don't know what they have in Casablanca, and let the United States ambassador or consular know that there are 10 American exchange students learning in Morocco. Just let him know that they're present, that they're in the country. And if the man asks why he's informing them of this fact, he should say, in quotes, in case we have to leave at a moment's notice. In case we have to leave at a moment's notice. So this young man, he's older than I am, Danny K, takes his friend's passports, and he goes down to the embassy in Casablanca, and he goes in to see the ambassador, and he says, I'm an American exchange student. We're here in Morocco for a year or 2 years as students, and I just want you to know that we're here. So the ambassador says, why are you coming to let me know today that you're here? So he repeats the words that he was told to say, in case we have to leave at a moment's notice. The ambassador turns ashen, his face turns gray, turns every color in the rainbow. there was something going on behind the scenes. Okay, we know now, after all these years, that in the early 80s, and for those of us who are old enough, Rabbi Yossi Rebbe, since anybody who's my generation, or even a little younger, for sure older, remembers that for about 5 years, do you remember this? For about 5 years, the Rebbe kept on saying, Devel Chokoltzach. Do you remember? Devel Chokoltzach. Every occasion, he would say to the kids. It started around Mem Aleph, 81, and it stopped 85. It stopped. There were a few years where the Rebbe said over and over and over again, Mezed Klar. The Rebbe would say, when the Rebbe said me, he meant ich, but he never said me. Mezed Klar. As the Vel Chokoltzach, we see clearly that the world is shaking. And the Rebbe said it over and over. The Rebbe made fasts during those few years. No one knew what the Rebbe is talking about. Now we know that at the last few years of the Soviet Union, our president was Reagan, who was called a cowboy. The Soviets were convinced that we're going to make Rachmana litzlan a preemptive nuclear strike. And there were moments where we were this close to nuclear war, this close. The Soviets had whole systems of how they were going to measure the likelihood of an attack, and they were going to make, God forbid, the preemptive attack. Reagan met Gorbachev in 85, the first time. I read this in the book. And he said to Gorbachev, I want to talk to you in private. Take your translator, my translator. I want to talk to you in private. And they took a walk. And Reagan says to Gorbachev, Mr. Gorbachev, we have no intentions of starting a nuclear war. And it dispelled that fear. But the Rebbe knew it. How did the Rebbe know it? The Rebbe knew it Beruach Kodshe, and for about 5 years, the Rebbe kept on saying, we see clearly that the world is shaking. We fasted, literally fasted half days. You remember those fasts? Till afternoon, we would say Vayachal, and then we would eat. Those fasts came from 770, from the Rebbe, for a few years, and then it stopped. This is in the middle of that period. So this boy walks into the American embassy in Morocco, and he tells the ambassador that he's letting him know that he's here, in quotes, in case we have to leave at a moment's notice. So the ambassador's face gave it away. In other words, if you hold secrets, you know, the Rebbe once told somebody, there's 3 levels in a person who keeps a secret. And the third one is, you have no idea that he's holding one. When he told the ambassador those words, in case we have to leave at a moment's notice, his face gave away that there was something going on that was very clandestine, very secret. And this bocher knows about it. So he looks at this bocher very earnestly, and he says to him, so what do you know? What do you know that you're coming to me with this kind of a foreboding? So the bocher says, I know nothing. You know, Danny K, you have to know, I know nothing. He says, what are you doing here? So he gave him the Rebbe speech. You know the Rebbe speech? Yes, Rebbe B'Yisrael. In 5 minutes, he made this guy into a chassid. He explained to him what the Rebbe is. I mean, you know, we all know how to give the Rebbe speech. You know, sometimes we should give ourselves the Rebbe speech, but we know how to give the Rebbe speech. Yes, Rebbe B'Yisrael, and he knows everything, and he's concerned with everybody. When he was done, the ambassador was very impressed. So he says to this bocher, now please listen carefully to the story, okay? But for this, we have to bring out the most mature, the wisest part of us. If your rabbi has so much information and he's sending you to me to tell me something that you don't even understand, what does your rabbi propose we should do about it? What does your rabbi propose we should do about it? So he tells them, my rabbi proposes we should get the children together and they should pray. We should get the children, the kleine kinderlach, little kids together, and they should daven. And the ambassador was so disappointed. The world is about to blow up, and your rabbi is getting children together to pray. That's a solution to World War III. So I'm asking you, what happened? What happened in Tafshin Mem Gimel? Nothing happened. So apparently, getting children together to pray may not impress an ambassador, but impresses whoever is the puppeteer that's above the ambassador. This is a Maaseh Shahoya. The Rebbe's solution to tzaddis in the world is a mitzvah. And he knows what he's talking about. He's a great Rebbe. We trust him with our life, mamish with our life. And when he says, a kapitel tilim, an act of Avos Yisrael, Getting children together to say, Torah, Tefillah, Tzedakah, we have to appreciate how down to earth this is, even though it's so spiritual. We are not holy people. At least I am not. So I don't have a chush in this. But that's what a chassid does. The Rebbe tells you to do something, you don't have to understand, you have to listen. And getting children together to pray is a solution to these kinds of issues. Now another example of this, it's the same thing, just an earlier situation. And this, I was a kid at the time. The summer before the Yom Kippur War, which is now, he says 51 years ago. Tafshin Lamed Gimel, 1973. I was almost 8 years old. And I was a troublemaker, I was a difficult kid. A whole summer the Rebbe is talking about children. A ganze Zumir. That you get kids together and it defeats all enemies. The Rebbe connected it to the story of Purim, that Mordechai gathered the children together and he prayed. Mordechai defeated Haman with the tefillah and the Torah of little children. And he connected it to the fact that the previous Rebbe, in 1927, when he was arrested, said the same thing in the Maimer V'Kibul HaYehudim, which we now call V'ata Tetzaveh, because the Rebbe's V'ata Tetzaveh is based on that V'Kibul HaYehudim. But the Frierdiker Rebbe writes that the solution to the Gezeiris in Russia is a little Tenei Kishel Beis Rivka. So I was almost 8, my brother was almost 7, so my Beit Zayin Geznud L'Arichas HaMishonim. And we did plenty of fighting and plenty of disrupting, and we made whatever, we were not tzaddikim. And all our teachers and our council are telling us is that the Rebbe is saying that we, us children, are Hevel She'ein Beichet. Hevel means the air that a child breathes has no sin. And the Gemara says, Ein Eidem Hevel She'ein Tfilas Hevel She'ein Beichet L'Tfilas Hevel She'esh Beichet. You cannot compare the prayer of a child who is pure and innocent to the prayer of an adult. And I, as a kid, remember thinking, I have no sin. I just made my mother cry. I just beat my brother up. But the Rebbe said so. So this was another thing. When the war started, Yom Kippur, the Rebbe made a fabrengen. There's a tape of it. There's a tape. You can listen to the Rebbe saying it. And there's also a transcript, a sicha, which is written down, that the Rebbe edited. That the Rebbe said about himself, Niba v'lo yoda ma niba. That the whole summer he was talking about children. And I said, the Rebbe said, I didn't understand myself what was pushing me to speak so much about the children. And when the war started, the Rebbe said, I understood that Melmaila, the Rebbe didn't use the word Melmaila, but Megishtupt, I was pushed to speak about children and the power of the tefillah of Kleine Kiddelach. It's a serious thing. It's a very, very serious thing. Another example is before the 6-Day War. Now this is I'm too young for this. I don't remember this. You still have to be close to a senior citizen to remember the 6-Day War. The 6-Day War happened, there was 2. And I've been told by my teachers that it was because of the events that surrounded the 6-Day War that the Rebbe stopped being the Lubavitcher Rebbe and he became the Rebbe. Until the 6-Day War he was the Lubavitcher Rebbe. After the 6th Day War he was the Rebbe. What was the story? I'm sure you've heard the story 100 times. That when they anticipated that war, in other words, everybody knew the war was coming. Everybody knew the war was coming. What the Seini Yisrael was saying, you can't even think. What our enemies were saying, but they thought it's going to be a protracted war. It's going to go on for a long time. And remember, they never fought with one enemy. They always fought on 3 or 4 fronts. This tiny little country. And in the 6-Day War, Israel was not only tiny, it was also splintered. And they expected who knows what. Every foreign government told all of their people to leave the country. Everybody left. The American students left, the European students left, the Australian students left, the South American students left. The only one who stayed were the Lubavitchers. Because there was a direct hurrah from the Rebbe, B'shum Meif, not to leave the country. B'shum Meif! The Rebbe told people to go to Eretz Yisrael. And there's famous stories where people a man came to the Rebbe and he said, Rabbi, I know this couple, they have only one kid, they don't have a spare. You got to make an exception. And the Rebbe said to this man, and Yechidus, it's a long story. I have hundreds of only children in Israel. And if I didn't think that Israel was a safe place, I would not tell them to stay. And the Rebbe wrote a telegram, and he wrote letters, and the quotable quote of that war was Hine leyonum v'layishan sheme Yisrael. The Rebbe wrote it again and again. Hine leyonum v'layishan sheme Yisrael. The guardian of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. Right before that war, literally a day or two before, the Rebbe made Miftzat film. Lag B'Omer. The Rebbe spoke to the kids publicly. It's probably the most famous video of the Rebbe, where the Rebbe spoke so strong about the Nitzachon of Eretz Yisrael that Yisrael will be victorious. And then the 6-day war happened in a blink. It was over before it started. It was not much over before it started. There's a Yid who's now Olav Shalom. His name was Rabbi Yossi Paltiel. He lives on Empire Boulevard. You know Yossi Paltiel, Olav Shalom? Yeah, you know who I'm talking about. He had just gotten married. He was like 50 years old. Him and his brother had just come from Russia. The Rebbe told them they should get married and promised them children, and they both got married, and they both had children. They were beautiful people. Rabbi Yosef and Rabbi Shmuel, they were special Jews. And he was a few months after the chasana. The halacha is, when a person gets married, for 12 months he's not allowed to do anything. Anything. Halachically he's not allowed. He's not even allowed to carry water. So Yosel Mochkin wrote the Rebbe a letter that if the Rebbe gives him permission, he's going to go to Eretz Yisrael and he's going to shecht Arabs b'char b'yabakashti. That's what he wrote. B'char, my sword and my bow. So the war started on Monday. The Rebbe didn't answer him. Friday night, the war was over basically. The Rebbe comes into shul, and the Rebbe sees him, and the Rebbe gives him one of those magic smiles that lights up the world. And he said, I read this in an article about him. His children have tried to correct me, but once I register a mistake, it stays in. There's details to the story that I'm not repeating correctly, but he said that Rebbe's relationship with him changed forever after that. The 6-day war was over in a flash, and everybody saw clearly the pasha, the nevuah, the prophecy of the Rebbe. And one last thing, this happened more recently, and I mean all these films are now coming out. Everyone is talking about the Achei Temimim and so on and so forth. 30 years ago, when we had the first Gulf War, the Rebbe encouraged people to stay in Eretz Yisrael. The Rebbe encouraged people to visit Eretz Yisrael. And the Rebbe refused to give anybody permission to to change their plans and not go. The Rebbe told a Yid, you're a Rav. If you don't go to Israel, you're paskening that Israel is not safe. You're not allowed to give such a psak. You must go. And the Rebbe then used the expression, the eyes of God, the videos that Chabad makes, that Jem makes, is called Eyes Upon the Land. That's primarily from that war. The eyes of Hashem are upon Eretz Yisrael from the beginning of the year till the end of the year. The Rebbe said repeatedly, it's the safest place in the world. The safest place in the world. And I want to tell you something. I want to tell me something. I want to tell all of us something. But listen to this, Maiseh. I have a topic that I'm supposed to talk about. I prepared. I have a lot of pages of notes. I don't know what I'm going to get to, what I'm not going to get to, but I think this is important. There's a video of a man coming to Dollars. Dollars was an amazing thing. Because the Rebbe stood in public every Sunday and met thousands of people, mamish hit and run. The whole thing was, for most of us, it was a second. Bracha v'atzlacha, bracha v'atzlacha. It was very fast. If you stopped to talk to the Rebbe, it was 5 seconds, it was 10 seconds, it was 20 seconds. If you were the Prime Minister of Israel, it was a minute, it was very quick. It's all recorded. And every word out of the Rebbe's mouth is a nes. Every word out of the Rebbe's mouth is a nevuah, and everybody knows it. Dollars is a gilu. You know what I say dollars is? Dollars is a throwback to what Moshe Rabbeinu was doing before Yisro got involved. You know the story? Moshe Rabbeinu was giving dollars. And Yisro said, this is a bad idea. You have to give dollars through Tankisten. So Moshe Rabbeinu asked the Rebbe, yeah, give dollars for Tankisten. So the Rebbe started giving $2 for Tankisten. He said, you know what? I'm going back to before Yisrael. I'm giving dollars myself. Dollars was the Rebbe standing there. Any Yid in the world, any goy, could come every Sunday and go by the Rebbe, and get a bracha v'atzlacha. So a man comes to the Rebbe from Israeli bonds. Israeli bonds are a way of raising money to support Eretz Yisrael. Now, the financial condition of Eretz Yisrael today is shalei be'erech. It's a whole different circumstance to the financial condition of Eretz Yisrael 30 years ago. Eretz Yisrael is not bad financially. I mean, listen, having a war where half of your population is not going to work, it does affect the economy, but the Eretz Yisrael economy is a much stronger economy now than it was then. It's not even close. It was a very depressed time. And he comes to the Rebbe. Listen. He comes to the Rebbe. And he says to the Rebbe, I represent Israeli bonds in America or New York. What tactic should I use to get more people to invest in Israel? Because people were afraid to invest. They thought they'd lose their money, push it. So the Rebbe looks at this man and he says, you should say that the best investment in the world financially is in Eretz Yisrael. Your campaign should be the safest investment of dollars in the world is in Israel. And then the Rebbe tells him these words, I give you a blessing to go in this direction. You know what that means? I give you a bracha that you should trust me. Because the guy who was selling Israeli bonds didn't believe it himself. He knows what kind of investment Israel is 30 years ago. And the Rebbe says, your position should be the best place to invest your money in Israel. And it's on you. If you'll believe it, people will believe it. If you'll sell it, people will buy it. But if you don't believe it yourself, so the Rebbe tells him two things. Number one, your approach to selling Israeli bonds should be the best investment in the world is Israel. Number two, I give you a bracha, you should actually do what I'm telling you. So the Rebbe said, the safest place in the world is Eretz Yisrael, and he gives us a bracha that we should believe him. Sometimes it's kind of hard. It's a mixed bag. B'chlal, Golos is a mixed bag. It's a very, very mixed bag. But this is a fact. And I don't think any of us could deny it. In the middle of all this darkness and uncertainty, right? The worst thing is not knowing. The worst thing is not knowing. The worst thing is not knowing. We are witnessing historic miracles that are happening to the Jewish people, to us. The Eibush is protecting Eretz Yisrael, protecting all of us, all over the world, with nisim and niflois, geluyim that are, you could even say, unprecedented. The only difference between today and 1991 is that in 1991, when a miracle happened, the Rebbe pointed it out and we trusted him. If we were to use the Rebbe's cliche line, open our eyes. In the middle of all this pain, there is so many miracles. The love that the Eibishter is showing to the Jewish people now is unbelievable. I don't know if you remember it. I think it was 2017. It goes back a while. This time of year, they always start their wars in the 3 weeks. You know that? You look at the last 20 years, whenever we had tzadus with our neighbors, it was always this time of year. And there were a bunch of rockets. And one of the chevre from their team, from the other side, said, we're aiming our rockets at the right targets, and their God is pushing them off course. It was in the newspaper. And their God is moving them away. We're witnessing nisim she'en komaya. And I'm not trying to say we should say yay. It's very painful, and it's very difficult, and it's very frightening, and it's very unsure. And again, the worst part is we don't know what's going to be tomorrow. I'm going to say something publicly which maybe I shouldn't say. But the 3 weeks are supposed to be a difficult time for the Jewish people. What's happening this year? State of Yisrael are falling. It's almost like Mashiach came already, and the 3 weeks, instead of being a time of Avelos, is a time for maximum ness. That's my feeling. Take it or leave it. Last night I got a video from Rabbi Shishler. Forgive me for saying your name if you don't want me to mention your name. He's a Yid in South Africa, he's a wonderful shliach. Rabbi Shishler, he's very prominent chassid and shliach, and he's one of the sought Lubavitcher public speakers. So he put out a 60-minute clip. I saw it last night. And this I probably can find you and send it to you. I think, I can't promise. That I reached out to him and he sent me a newspaper clip that the Iranians, Yamach Shemam V'Zechram, who are not Seder Yisrael, that Seder Kol Ha'olam Kulei, know about Tisha B'Av. They know about Tisha B'Av. When they planir in Kach V'Kach, you know what I'm saying? This just like they started on Simchas Torah. So Rabbi Shishler says that Haman calculated the destruction of the Jewish people in the month of Adar. Why? Because Haman somehow knew, and how did Haman know? I mean, what kind of historian was he? It has to mean the Malach of Haman. It has to mean the Malach of Haman. That he said, okay, it's a bad month for the Jewish people. It's a time that he can chas v'sholom bring about what he wanted to do. So the Gemara says, he didn't know Moshe Rabbeinu was born. So you have to ask a kasha. If you don't mean the Haman HaGashmi, if you don't mean the physical, you mean the Ruchinuyus Haman knew that Moshe Rabbeinu passed away, why didn't know that he was born? And the answer is, he knew he was born, he just didn't think it mattered. Because you're not born a tzaddik, you grow up to be a tzaddik. He didn't understand that Moshe Rabbeinu's birth, at the moment of birth, Nismala Abayis Kula Oira, the world was filled with light. So Rabbi Shishler says they think about the Churban Abayis, but they do not know that it says in the Gemara, it says in Midrashim, it says in Chazal, that Neil the Mashiach Yisrael. The Tisha B'Av is the birthday of Mashiach. And the reason we say Nachem, Tisha B'Av in the afternoon, Nachem is Nechama. Nachem is not Avelus. Anenu is Avelus. Every fast day we say Anenu. Anenu is mourning. Tisha B'Av in the afternoon we say Anenu. We also say Nachem. Anenu we say in Shema Kelenu, and Nachem we say in Vili Yerushalayim Ercha. Nachem, it says in Svarim, is said because Mashiach is born in Tisha B'Av. So Rabbi Shishler says they don't know the Mashiach is born in Tisha B'Av. And when Mashiach is born, it's Dave Gewaldike Geluyim. I'll tell you a Lashon Hara Maaseh, off the record. It's not off the record, it's published in a book, so how off the record could it be? And the Frierdiker Rebbe said once that whenever tzaddikim are born, it's Mavatal Gzeres. Whenever tzaddikim are born, it nullifies decrees. And there was another sikh where the Frierdiker Rebbe said that Afen Yor Tov Reish Samach Beis, the year the Rebbe was born, 1902 was given grace Gzeres. There were big decrees. Far Pesach seien sie plötzlich bottle geworden. Right before Pesach, they just vanished. You see what's going on here? Nailed the Mashiach Yisrael. So we don't know. We don't know. But these are thoughts. These are thoughts. And of course, the most important thought of all, in all of this speaking and talking, is how we got to do something. We have to do something. Whatever something is, we got to do. It's not helpful to anybody. It's not even helpful to ourselves. You know, you're not yotze by caring. You know, you're yotze through an action. But we should appreciate. Rabbi said, we are Lubavitcher Chassidim. We have to appreciate the connection between Ruchinuyus and Gashmiyus. We have to appreciate the connection between a mitzvah and the life of a soldier. Between a child saying a pasuk and the safety of Eretz Yisrael. The Rebbe taught us that, and the Rebbe teaches us that. And he knows what he's talking about. We can't become realists, pragmatists, you know, like it's brought in the Sichas. Haman made a gzeira, he's killing every Jew. Mordechai was well connected. Mordechai was from the Yeshiva B'Shar HaMelech. Mordechai was amongst the 7 men who stood by Achashverosh's gates. What did he do? He put on sackcloth and he ran through the streets crying and screaming and gathered children and he learned Torah. Because he knew that if you break the Siba, you break the Mesubav. If you break the cause, you break the effect. And the cause is broken through Hevel. She'ein Beichet, Hevel Tineke Shel Beis Rabban. When a child says a pasuk tilim, child says it's a shmira, and it's a hatzolah, and it's an itachen, and the mitzvah Hashem, it should be this year and now, and take over miyad mamish.